Yeah, so sadly our panel shrank overnight. Kobus and I now have to speak twice as fast and twice as intelligently. We'll see how we do. So yeah, as you heard, we want to talk about collaboration and how AI might change, particularly the interdisciplinary collaboration. We know UX/DX is very much about bringing people together across different disciplines. And so with AI now, everything gets kind of jumbled a bit. And so we thought it would be interesting to explore what that could look like. So let's start with you. Maybe talk a little bit about your role and what you do at Priceline.
Sure. So, first of all, apologies to anybody who was really hoping, to listen to the other panelists. Hopefully, what we have to say is of value to you. This is such an important topic, and as product design, research leaders, we have to grapple with this and figure out where to go. So. I work for Priceline. Priceline is a travel company. For those of you that may not know, we're part of Booking Holdings, the world's biggest travel company. Priceline's been around, I think, for 27 years. We, started during the .com boom, and we're one of the few companies that made it through. And, we're very much focused on the North American market compared to like Booking.com, our sister company who is global. We also have Kayak, OpenTable, Agoda. So, a bunch of brands under the same umbrella, but Priceline, is the brand I work for. So my role is, I lead product for a number of areas. I'm not going to talk about some of those. AI, I think, is the part I'm most focused on at the moment, and it's moving extremely fast. It's a really exciting time because we're a traditional company. We've been around the block in terms of innovations like mobile, the internet, all of those, and in a sense, it's history repeating itself, but this time it's just much faster, and the possibilities, you could argue, are endless. So what we're really trying to do, and what my focus is on, is to figure out like how do we use this technology to improve our product to customers, and that's kind of a tall mandate. We've sold travel a certain way for many years, and it's like hotel rooms, flights, rental cars, packages, but now AI sort of upends this, and our relationship with our customer really changes, and the interface through which we interact with our customers change. So we're doing a lot of things. I sort of bucket them in sort of three aspects. There's like non-conversational products, and how do we integrate AI into our traditional OTA booking funnel, and that's sort of something that's developed across the industry over many years, and it's kind of the same if you go to different online travel agencies. You're pretty much faced with a linear process where you have to go through certain steps. You have to interact with UI to tell us what your intent is, and then you end up with a long list of options, and then you have to make the choice yourself. So traditionally we've put the burden on the customer essentially to do much of the heavy lifting, and we want to improve that, right? Then there's like the conversational part, which I find like super exciting, and it's essentially starting with chatbots and figuring out what's the next iteration, and where does that take us, right? And we've launched our AI travel assistant Penny 2 years ago, and we can talk about like how that happened, because I think there's an interesting lesson there. But the point or the goal really is to build an AI travel agent that sells you the right product fit for your needs based on your intent, and makes it easier, right? And then there's also a bucket of how do we enable AI across the company, and make sure we get the benefits of productivity and automating work. And what we have found is we could build a conversational experience that actually reduces costs. All companies like to do that, right? And at the same time improve customer satisfaction, because a brand like ours, that we're focused on giving customers the best deal, right, at the lowest price. That means that you can't expect to have like an instant answer on your phone call for a one-on-one support, right? Like there are some compromises in terms of, the cost structure underlying that, deal that we offer. And now with AI, really helps you move quicker. So, at the same time, our product designer who needs to think through what does a refund interaction look like and what do we want to say when, right, can simulate this interaction in a sandbox. So I think it's, our, each team member needs to put different hats on, but we also have to be mindful that people do have different skill sets and different tool sets. So it's more about like fostering that environment where you have great communication and where it's not like this is the line and I'm on this side of the line and you're on that side of the line and we don't step over it. It's a team sport, right? So I think that it's not easy to do. It depends on the culture of your company and of your team and the right personalities, but that's what we've found, helps us build a successful product and team.
And did you assign roles in a typical way, or did you give team members opportunities to take on different tasks than before?
We still do assign roles in traditional way, but I would say the way we solve problems, if there's someone that's like, I really want to go and try and edit this prompt, and I'm going to put it through, a smart reasoning model to see how I can like optimize it, and I want to test different versions. Like you can do that. It's not like you need to get my approval. It's all about the outcome, right? And if you have the reason to believe that you can get us to that, by all means, step up. It's not like our developers are going into Figma yet to design, but I think eventually, if you think about where AI is going and where AI, like our role as developers or designers or product managers are more going to be to manage AI team members, right? That's the way we have to think about that. Then the ability to use a certain tool becomes less important because the AI is going to be able to do whatever you want it to do because it can work with multiple tools through, to a certain extent. You still need, obviously, developers to understand the code and they need to be able to read it, even though much of it is now being generated by AI models. So who knows where it will end, this sort of boundary between the disciplines, but I think the more fluid you keep it or not lock yourselves in, the better the outcome.
Yeah, and so ideally there's this shift from a focus on the process to the outcome, right? So the notion of craft changes because AI can take a lot of the load away from writing code or designing an application. You said you're also responsible for or part of the enablement within the company?
Yeah, so that's been quite interesting. We want to be an AI first company, right? What does that mean? It means we need our people from across the company in every single function to really learn to use how to use these tools. And we don't think of it as we're gonna. It's not about like cost optimization or automating people's roles. It's more like how can we use our people to do more by not having them do repetitive tasks, right? And it's kind of interesting to see how I've not found a way to like some people just naturally gravitate towards using AI as a tool, and you have to figure out why and then help them teach that to other people, which is easier said than done. It's like some people think of AI as like this search model where it's like I have a query that I put in and then I get an answer out. And if I want to change the output, I now have to go and edit my query. Like I saw someone interact with ChatGPT like this. I was like taken aback. I'm like, I didn't realize some people had this mental model because I assumed they had the same mental model than me, that it's a conversation and you like ask follow-up questions and you treat it like you were a person. So the point is, I think you really have to find these pockets of people who are advocates and who can use the tools, who can also know the limitations. Right, that's super important because you need to understand where the boundaries. It's like this fuzzy boundary of capabilities that keeps on shifting every week, and it's hard for people to keep up with that, right? You can't expect everybody to be at the up to date with the latest development. So it's really to create like safe spaces, like give people tools that they can use, put the right guardrails around those, so that you have from like a governance perspective confidence that your data is secure, people are not, like you have to make sure that your policies are effectively implemented and executed, and then to have like an environment where people can ask questions and can learn and to sort of get excited about it. Really, that's I think very helpful.
So a lot of companies have started to set targets for code automation, say like a certain percentage of the code needs to be automated. Like in your world, in the world of product management, have you been equally prescriptive and said from now on the PRD needs to be generated by ChatGPT or
No,
something
not
like
at
that?
all. No, we're like, these are the tools. Use it or don't use it. It's up to you. We don't force people to use it because some people are not comfortable with it, right? I mean, ideally, we would have like more people use it over time, but it's more to drive to get people to realize that it can actually make your life easier and it can make your job more fun. Because we all find comfort in these day-to-day repetitive tasks. I do that. Like, I go to a dashboard and then I want to, I spend like 20 minutes looking at a graph where maybe there's a better way to do that. Maybe I can have the AI just tell me if something is up with the graph and I don't have to like spend 20 minutes on it. So I think, it's a sort of a cultural change also. But yeah, we're not prescribing it by any means.
Right. And so what would you say like to people who are kind of coming to you and saying, how do I best get ready for this new world? Like how do I, prepare myself? How do I position myself in the right way to be
Yeah,
ready?
I mean, the advice that everybody gives usually is just use the tools, figure out, how they can help you, right? And that depends what what work you do, what's your typical day to day. And I would say you really have to challenge yourself and figure out like what am I missing and why, like if it doesn't work for you, why doesn't it work for me, and change your way of working, right? So yeah, it's just becoming more comfortable with it, treating it as a I am tempted to say the word peer. That may be controversial, but you have to realize these models are getting as smart as us, and that there's some kind of, I think, bias we all have that we don't want to admit that there's now a smarter tool that could potentially get work done, faster. And the moment you sort of have that acceptance, go through that phase, I think it becomes easier because then it's all about how can you use this thing for the benefit of your company and your personal development, etc. So yeah.
I mean, we've certainly found at HTEC there's a lot of talk about play this today, right? That play needs to be somewhat orchestrated.
Yeah.
You can't just tell everybody, "Oh, play with those tools in your free time," but you
Yeah.
actually have to give people an environment where they can play with it. You have to give them a sandbox, if
Yep.
you will, or you have to say, "Okay, this week we're going to try to do our regular product management and design task with AI." And here's the boundary for all of that, right? You can't just leave it to people on your own. I don't know if that resonates with you.
That is true because if people do sometimes get stuck. That's why like we have found like create a Slack channel where people can just like ask questions and can share wins, right? And can create like sessions where like people can present their the GPT that they've built to like automate this repetitive task that used to take them 2 hours a day, and now they can actually spend that time on more value-adding, projects. So I agree. It's about fostering this, environment where people feel comfortable in not knowing or want to experiment, but also share wins and then help each other. And again, that's easier said than done, but that's why it sort of does need to come from the top. If you're like as a leadership skeptical of the benefits of the technology, it's hard to expect people to be excited about it. So luckily our company is pretty vocal about our desire to use these tools more.
So how do you think your personal role will change? What do you do 3 or 5 years from now differently than
I
today?
have no idea, but I mean, I'm excited about it. I think it's gonna get. What the thing I'm most excited about is like the ability to speed up what you want to create. So now it means you really have to think through what is the thing that you think is going to work, and with AI, hopefully, if all goes well, you'll be able to build that quicker, right? With the same number of people, and the realization is everybody else is also going to be able to do that. So, I don't think it's going to reduce like the pressure on us as product companies to innovate, but I think that's going to be a base requirement. So things are going to move quicker. I think we're going to be able to do things we currently can't do because of like limited skills, like tool skills. And I think, that excites me quite a bit.
That's cool. I think we have about 10 minutes for some questions, so maybe we'll just turn our attention to some of the questions we have here. So the top question is, historically, design-led products outperform engineering-led ones. In the age of AI, does this still hold true?
That's an interesting question. I mean, a design-led product, in my mind, is a product where a lot of thought was put in to what, how does this product make the user feel? Why does it exist, right? What is its sort of, reason to exist? So from that perspective, I agree. Like engineering products could be, sort of soulless, for lack of a better word. So I think to some extent, AI helps us better engineer design-led products, if that makes sense.
Yeah. To what extent do you think AI today is engineering-led versus design-led when you look across the board?
I do think that the frontier labs are very design focused. It does at least appear to me like they're making very intentional choices, even though like the user interface of a chat box does feel technical in a sense. You do see like the way like simplicity as a value, and the fact that like personalization of some of these tools are making the product much more, just feels like it's right for me, and it knows me, right? So I think from that perspective, I think I do appreciate that there's a strong design, sort of focus. I mean, where that will go, I hope that gets that's sort of built into the models in a sense that it sort of it becomes more pervasive. But we'll have to see.
Yeah, I think it's also common that in the early stages of technologies, we build something just because we can, and then over time, the real meaning and the significant contribution emerges.
Right. But if you think about it, like what we're building is like intelligence, right? So it's not just a technical feat. It needs to feel approachable. It needs to feel warm and human, right? Even though you have to separate human versus non-human, but the goal is to have a human-like interaction with it. So I guess design values are instrumental to achieving that.
Yeah. Next question. As our roles are evolving, how can you break down silos and bring better cross-collaboration across teams, especially when the skill sets are overlapping more?
I mean, that's hard. That, I don't know how you do that, because companies, like people mostly we don't like change, right? And most companies also are kind of resistant to change. So you have to almost like break down the barriers and silos with, sometimes like the organizational change, like the formal change may come later. It's more like, again, about communication and, getting a group of people from different disciplines around one goal, and, getting them to celebrate that together. It's kind of a hard thing. I'm not sure how quickly that's going to change.
What happens when design intuition clashes with machine learning predictions? Who wins?
That's an interesting one. So, I mean, I think eventually, this may also be controversial, but I think AI is going to play a bigger role in how user interfaces get like dynamically generated. Again, if you think about personalization, these models understand me, who I am, what my values are, what I want, what works for me better than, I may realize. Now, if you add that to like UI, the models are going to perhaps start more like dynamically generating UI that works, achieves like an objective that in a way that resonates with me, right? So I don't know, like design intuition, how do you like train the model and a product as a whole to achieve that? That's going to be I think a big challenge for us as product managers and designers, is to actually do that, because if it clashes, it's not going to achieve the outcome. So I think that's actually a big focus area in the future.
You mentioned reducing hallucinations. What do you think a typical person's tolerance is for hallucinating AI responses?
I mean, if you look at the data is showing models are hallucinating far less than they used to just a year ago. I think, you know, some of the most popular models are like in the 2% range. So hallucination turned out to be not this big problem everybody was worried about, and with the right, guardrails and I personally think it's a totally manageable problem, and it's going to get solved over time. So I think, the tolerance, depending on what industry you're in, obviously some industries are much more sensitive to hallucination versus others. So you have to, it's all based on, your industry, whether it's regulated, what the impact is of a hallucination on the quality of the product, right? If our AI assistant confuses New York with Los Angeles, it's less of an issue than, and not that this has ever happened, and I don't think it would, right? If you're in like a financial services, or in healthcare, obviously that's a much bigger problem. So yeah, it depends.
So you haven't sent any of your customers to the wrong destination yet?
Not that I know of. I mean, we obviously need to communicate to customers. They're talking to an AI, super important. It's still a beta product, right? So it can, it's not 100% accurate. So I think it's important to make sure customers understand that. But, we've luckily not seen any cases of customers being sent to the wrong destination.
I'm more in that the repetitive and creative tasks I love are being outsourced. The repetitive and creative tasks that I love are being outsourced. How can someone who loves slow creative work get excited about using AI?
Yeah, I mean, I don't mourn the repetitive tasks personally. I find like, having a brainstorming session with AI, I've found, quite fun sometimes, because it does come up with ideas that I didn't think of. Now, especially if I push my ideas to the limit and then sort of have it take those ideas and then see if it can come up with an even better idea, right? So I think it's all about context and trying to put in to the model everything you can give it, right? So it's like that chain, that sort of chain of thought without filtering. That's sort of, I found that approach quite successful. And then you sort of just put it all out there, everything that's going through your mind, and then you ask the model, okay, help me make sense of this. And then sometimes that helps you in turn to, come up with an even better idea. So it's not like, in my mind, outsourcing it. It's more like just speeding up that process. Now, if you like the slow process, then, you can still slow it down. Just wait longer before you ask that follow-up question. So you are still in control. I think the moment you feel like you have to now deliver faster and like, that you don't want anxiety to sort of, I don't know if anybody saw this talk with Joni Ive like last week, but the thing that resonated most with me is like where he said, if you're anxious while building your product, you can have an anxious product. So I think there's something there.
How should UX designers and developers collaborate to build services using AI?
I mean, again, like we've said, it's about, having them work together, having them collaborate, and on this, on one team. I mean, in terms of services, right? I think services are products. So, yeah, I don't think there's anything besides the need to better understand the value that each brings to the process, and to also, see how you can actually sort of bridge that gap maybe with AI's help. So I think like what we haven't tried, but now I'm thinking, through this, like maybe have more deliberate sort of design jams where you have like, developers in the room and product managers and, designers, and because like I think the important thing from a design perspective is to have a really good sense of like the underlying capabilities, and you have to we're drawn to the things that we can do quickest that's going to move the needle most, right? And you need that, I think the developer contribution is really important there, so that you don't come up with this, concept that's not actually executable.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's also the realm where I think there's tremendous opportunities for design, because we now have tools to do things that we couldn't do before.
Absolutely.
And you've seen that as well, right? Yeah. I think we have maybe a few more seconds, so real quick, in 10 seconds. How can AI-driven decisions stay user-centered despite data-driven priorities?
I mean, user feedback, I think, is really important, right? So that's something we look at daily, like, something simple as upvotes, something simple as customers telling us, I have feedback. And, we really take that seriously, and we want to, build better feedback loops where we are able to, with like evaluations is such an important part of building AI products, so that you can understand how your product is performing by actually using AI to monitor it, right? So I think that's something that wasn't really possible before, that now we can be more in tune with how our users are experiencing the product in real time. And I think that's going to be a big differentiating factor between successful and less successful AI products.
Cool. Thank you so much, Cobus. Really interesting.
Thank you very
all of
much.
All right.